Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's Monday, May 26th. School is out. Summer's around the corner. Survivor just wrapped season 48, and everything old is new again. Prison Break, The Sopranos, Buffy, One Tree Hill, all in pre-production to come back. Scrubs, Malcolm in the Middle, Royal Pains, not only coming back, but featuring the original cast. I was sad when I heard that Prison Break wasn't going to include Michael Scofield and Lincoln Burrows, but I guess they already did try bringing that back.
It's just taking place in it's a different story?
Yeah, I think it's a reboot. It's like a complete reboot, new characters. And it's funny because I think the person who plays Sucre's wife from the original Prison Break is in Duster. So she plays his love interest, Josh. Well, no, actually, I think it was his brother's. Yeah, because it's the people. So so she's sort of a love interest, and she's also his brother's wife.
You're thinking about Izzy.
Yes, Izzy. Alas, not everything is good news in the industry. The wheel of time comes for us all. Kevin Bacon's The Bondsman has been reaped, and Around the Horn has honked its last.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah, and if you're bummed that FBI International and FBI Most Wanted were both canceled, and you don't want to wait around for the franchise's new spinoff series, CIA, fear not, because you have another FBI-centric show in Duster. This show follows FBI agent Nina Hayes as she enlists the help of a getaway driver to be a criminal informant and take down a crime syndicate run by a guy named Ezra Saxton, played by Keith David in Arizona, back in 1972. Episodes 1 and 2 are out on Max, soon to be HBO Max. Right now, let's give a little shout out to Josh Holloway since he's the one starring in this, right?
Yeah.
How much do you know about Josh Holloway?
Well, I know that he was Sawyer from Lost, obviously. It's probably where he's most famous from. And then he did 3 years of Colony or 3 seasons of Colony.
Yeah, he's been in a couple shows since. He was actually in sort of a lull. He was in Yellowstone for a while, but there hasn't been a ton in the last couple of years. And that's what he was talking about when he got the call from J.J. Abrams, obviously also known from Lost, Fringe, Star Trek, Star Wars, a lot of sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, this is like a Lost kind of, this is almost a reunion, right? Because you also have Greg Grunberg as well, right?
Well, that's J.J. Abrams in a nutshell. He likes nostalgia, he likes needle drops, and he likes flashy, what was it? The thing that
Lens flare.
Lens flare, yes. So Josh Holloway, though, I do want to run down some facts and see if you can guess true or false on them. Ready?
Okay.
Born the day of the moon landing, July 20th, 1969. How old do you think he actually is?
I mean, I know he's in his 50s, but I'm just, you know what? I'm going to say true.
That is true. He was born. So while first steps were made on the moon, he was making his first steps. He walked out. Turned down the role of Gambit in X-Men's Origins.
Yes, right?
You do know that?
I think so,
yes,
yeah.
that is true. Was the first actor cast on Lost?
I'm going to go with false.
I'm not going to tell you on that one. Was on the high school wrestling team. His nickname was Babyface Assassin.
Babyface Assassin?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so true or false?
I'm false.
Okay, both of those you got right. So all 4 of them actually you got right. Jorge Garcia was the last 2. Hugo from Lost, both Babyface Assassin, also the first one cast. Sawyer, I didn't know this, but Hugo and most of the cast, Jack included, or Matthew Fox, they all had to read for Sawyer originally because they didn't have particular roles for the rest of them. And even when Josh Holloway was reading for Sawyer, he wasn't supposed to be a Southern guy. Apparently, they changed the role to sort of fit his personality because he forgot his lines midway through the audition. And he got mad and pissed off and kicked a chair. And they were like, this is perfect.
He kicked a chair at his audition?
Well, then he remembered his lines. And yeah, the only other audition story I have is for the person who plays Nina Hayes. Do you know what her name is in real life? It's like Rachel Hilson or something. She's from One of Us. This Is Us. And I'm trying to remember from my research, but she auditioned with her first scene of the show, and she didn't know anything else about it. She's also been in Love, Victor, and her name is Rachel Hilson. Yes. So J.J. Abrams, though, other than sci-fi shows, what do you know him from?
Well, I only really know him from sci-fi shows. I mean, he obviously
I'm going to throw some other ones out there for you. Felicity.
Yeah. Don't know it.
That's the one with the Americans chick in it. I think the horse show, possibly. Alias.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Back in the early 2000s.
Undercovers. All these are kind of spy shows. Alias, Undercovers, Duster, except for Felicity. That was just like a one-off back in the 90s. But yeah, so that's his non-sci-fi stuff. And like we said before, he likes to bring in his friends. Greg Grunberg is playing the chief FBI dude in Arizona, right? Yeah. And so he's Nina's boss. She gets transferred here. She's the first African-American in the CIA, right?
Yeah, and it covers a lot of themes like systemic racism, gender, kind of both with Nina, institutional barriers as well.
And yeah, racism with her partners, like the Native American guy, right? What's his name? A1 or something?
A1, yeah, that's what it is.
I don't know if it is.
No, it is. It's
I'm just
A1.
reading it. Okay. So yeah. So you have Baltimore Changes Everything. That's the first episode, and Suspicious Minds episode 2. How do you want to go about recapping?
Well, we'll focus mostly on episode 2, but we should probably talk a little bit about episode 1. Like you said, it takes place in 1972. We follow Nina Hayes. She's an African-American woman who is part of the FBI. First thing that she does once she is transferred to Arizona is she wants to go after Ezra Saxton.
Yes.
Ezra Saxton, as we come to realize throughout the rest of the, at least 2 episodes, is he has his hands in, like, the police force as well. Probably some people in the FBI.
He's a mafia dude. Yeah.
Yes, so I
He's
mean,
the gang leader.
he has a huge,
Got a big family.
yeah, connection. I mean, like, it's a big deal. But also Jim Ellis, that's who we kind of cut to.
His wheelman.
Yes, we see the first scene is him going to a payphone and picking it up and getting a call.
The only reason that this show was ever made was because that was the vision in J.J. Abrams' mind. Every interview that I read about this talked about that scene, despite the fact that if you cut it, the episodes would make just as much sense.
It's a very, very short scene.
Yes.
Because the next scene we get is way more important. We see that he's on this mission. We don't exactly know what is yet, but we see that Luna, his niece, is in the car.
And the cool thing about this first episode, the pilot, is that they actually shot in Arizona. The rest of it was all in Albuquerque and New Mexico and stuff like that. But like they actually went to site that they were going to be filming in. I don't know if they filmed in actual Phoenix. I think it was mostly in Tucson, but the desert was still Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, yeah, he's driving around with his niece and he's still doing a criminal job.
I should also mention it's called Duster because of the car that he's driving.
Yeah,
it's
red Plymouth.
Yeah, and so he ends up going to a fast food restaurant. We even get some
drive-through, yeah.
Yeah, drive-through, and he gets a heart from...
The kid in that drive-through reminded me so much of the Simpsons character, you know, the one with like the slime coming off his face, or like the sweaty like
it was a
pimply
teenager.
Kid. It was a teenager, and he just hands him. Now the kid I don't think is in on it. Right? Because later on we learned that the reason he got the phone call earlier at the payphone was because they were doing a drop-off and they used the restaurant as a drop-off place of what ends up being in the bag.
A heart.
A human heart.
Yes. So he ends up then actually getting in a car chase with 2 other people. It's supposed to just kind of show he has like a reckless life.
That there's a lot of mafia dudes around and like not necessarily friends with Ezra.
With the Saxton family. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, how long do you think a human heart can stay in a bag and still be like viable for transplant?
I don't know.
6 hours.
Really don't. Only 6 hours?
So how long? Only?
Well,
that was shocking to me. I was like, I would have assumed. How long do you think a brain would be?
Well, my question is more like, how long did he have the heart at the restaurant for? When was the heart taken out and put in the bag?
I think they said that a guy dropped it off like a few minutes before before Jim showed up. Because when Nina starts running the investigation and tracks down this fast food employee,
she learns about
She learns that Jim Ellis was the one who was bringing a heart across a border,
crossing borders,
and that's what she uses to blackmail.
We should probably go. Yeah, so he ends up getting the heart after he like outruns the 2 goons that are chasing after him.
Yeah, why does he need the heart?
He's trying to save Ezra Saxton's son,
who has a congenital heart disease. Right?
Yeah. And so then he ends up going to the house and being part of the operation. He has to pump the heart as they are changing
I don't know
it.
where, if you're watching the show, you're going to lose a little bit of sense of a belief, but like that's where I was just like, really? Like I will buy, because the first heart transplant in reality happened in 1967, I think, successfully. But in Arizona, it wasn't even until 1979. So this random setup with like this doctor that they pulled in and this rented medical supplies and a wheelman who's never pumped a heart before with his hand while he's doing the surgery. That's the actual first credible heart transplant in Arizona back in 1972. That just seems fantastic to believe, like in a realm where you're just having to be like, this is a very corny show.
Yes, no, absolutely. But one of like the corniness that I actually liked, because the intro, for example, I found the intro to be creative. It's just a Hot Wheel replica of what would be like crazy for a 10-year-old to envision.
I swear that it was originally supposed to be like an actual car thing, like a Dukes of Hazzard. You were supposed to see the jumping, and then they were like, this is too expensive.
You think they were just like, this is the blueprint?
We're not doing this. This isn't Star Trek. We don't have the budget for this. This is Max/HBO Max.
Yeah, it's like Hot Wheels cars. There's even the Hot Wheels ramps. There's like Lego type helicopters coming after it.
It's cool for what it is. I think episode 2 actually does a better job with the corniness of it, but let's finish off where episode 1 finishes off. How does Nina end up getting Jim on her side?
Right. So Jim, because he's learned that Nina is kind of investigating everything and he's so tight with the Saxon family, he's deciding that he's going to be on the run. But then he's given evidence, video files, that his brother, Joseph Ellis, was probably murdered by
Crazy
the
that
Ezra Saxon
in
family.
1972 they were able to go into because that's how Nina does it. She's at risk of getting fired automatically because it's a man's world, and her superiors are like, "Don't go after Jim Ellis. That's a lost cause. You're wasting time. You're going against direct orders." But then she still goes to the file room with her partner, A1, and he's a Native American, so
They
he's
bond.
facing
They
this.
bond over systemic racism, kind of, because he even tells her when she gets there, he's like, "Look, these people, they definitely are not like always welcoming here."
Right. I don't want to call out your cons too quickly, but it does feel like they concentrate on that in every scene that she's in.
Yeah.
And that feels like a little bit, it takes away from it.
From the
If you
two
show
episodes,
a
definitely.
couple really substantive times where it happens to her, and it would be happening to her a lot, but having her character defined by it feels like it's an insult to
I
her.
thought that the first scene that A1 was talking to her was enough. I didn't think that they had to keep on replaying that same scene throughout
I
the
was
two
fine when her
episodes.
boss came in and was like, "Hey, we don't trust a woman to do blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Wow, that's." But like even in episode 2, I think they were still concentrating on it. So her investigation does pay off though. She finds the video somewhere in their files of the explosion and is able to slow it down. And even for 1972 standards, bring it to Jim Ellis, even though he's already sort of like said, "I don't want to work for you." In fact, he was about to go on the run to like
He
leave her behind.
he went to his family's house, his parents, and he got like the passport. He was ready to
Corbin
go.
Burnson,
Yeah.
yeah, Benson, I think. And not only that, we learn about he has that evil stepmother, and he also says goodbye to his niece. But then he signs up to go and work for like I think in Mexico,
Mhm.
right? And he does like this blood bond thing. I think that's going to come back and pay like into play. But then what changes his mind is when Nina convinces him that Ezra may have had a hand in killing his brother.
Right.
And the way that Jim kind of like comes around to rationalizing why he's signing on to a CI, a criminal informant, it's like paperwork, is that he says he wants to actually clear Ezra's name, right?
Right.
And at the same time, who catches them?
It's the cop. The
Yeah,
cop from earlier in the episode.
there's a racist or like this evil cop that like it reminds me. I think they're like going for maybe a Joe Arpaio type issue.
You're talking about Sergeant Grooms. Yeah,
Right.
Sergeant Grooms kind of, he's looking at like the scene with binoculars, realizing that that Jim is going to
There's a
be
real
selling him
cops
out.
versus FBI, the local police versus the feds, but the cops are on the payroll of Ezra. So in episode 2, when he starts to threaten Jim and he says, "Hey, I noticed that you signed a deal with the feds. I'm going to blackmail you for $10,000 or
He
$10,000."
says, "Yeah, I need 10 grand to keep my silence." And of course, we're not even sure if Jim were to give him the 10 grand, which he's not going to, if he would even be
He
silent
doesn't
then.
have it. Yes.
Yeah.
And so instead, Jim goes to one of the other main, not mafia dudes, but like this guy he calls Sunglasses.
I liked the world building there because it was like, okay, you have one threat, but now we're starting to get introduced to even more people of this world. Sunglasses obviously being more threatening than this Grooms guy is. And Sunglasses says, "Yeah, I'll make sure this Grooms guy isn't a problem." They thought originally they were just going to talk to him, but I'm going to need these blue suede shoes because that's what Jim Ellis's promises. Elvis's blue suede shoes.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot there. That's where the corniness comes into factor. But like, I think they cast the mafia, like the main dudes, for their voices, like the gravitas of not only Keith David but also
Patrick Warburton as Sunglasses.
yeah. I mean, that's crazy that you have both of them. I think that it was a really good casting. He brings more to the show. Now, what you were saying with him being such a big Elvis fan and Elvis's shoes being at this party that
Palm Springs or something, right? Yeah.
his brother's wife would know about and that he'd be able to go in there and just take them. That's crazy.
Look, is it convoluted? Yes, but I actually enjoyed, I think, him trying to find the blue suede shoes the most out of the two episodes.
But then he does it, and Patrick Warburton's character, Sunglasses, follows through with his thing. He intimidates the cop. They shoot the cop a ton of times.
Well, what happened was that the cop ended up drawing his gun once he realized that Sunglasses was basically threatening him. And even though they shoot Grooms and it seems like he's gone, he turns back over even after being shot and then shoots Charlie. Charlie, we come to realize, we thought was just Sunglass's bodyguard, but that was actually his brother.
Is the cops guy is Grooms?
Yeah, Sergeant Grooms.
Okay, yeah. So, so he gets shot a billion times though, and obviously, Sunglasses is really depressed. And when he gets the shoes that he's promised, he then demands the $3,000 as well.
It's
Partially
kinda,
because he
yeah.
just wants revenge.
It's basically a double cross. I mean, that's what
I
he's
don't know if
doing.
it's a double cross because again, he just lost his partner, his duo, his second in command there, and so I think he's just like, if maybe he had dropped off the shoes, run away, and then come back like a couple days later, maybe things would have leveled in his head. Because he seemed like a good guy as far as mafia dudes go, because he even complimented his brother
Yeah, but when they end up having the fight, that was probably one of the funniest parts of the
at the bowling
episode.
alley when they
Yeah.
start throwing punches.
Sunglasses, his face gets crushed by a compressor.
Well, that's the thing that comes down to put the bowling pins down. And people have died in similar ways. I think there's like a gap behind the thing. It's very hard to die in that way, but it's possible.
I
You
mean,
can definitely get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that Sunglasses, he got trapped underneath the bar that comes down whenever they sweep up the bowling pins.
Right, but they made a big deal about like CGI and how his head just got cut in half.
There was a lot of things there. One, I liked Jim Ellis having to get the blue suede shoes. I thought that the second episode, that was the best part of the two episodes. I also liked Sunglasses. I was sad that even though Patrick Warburton, he does a great job in the episode as well, that we only got him for one episode because I like the shootout. But that was kind of, as far as the second episode, what I thought was the best story. In
It
fact,
also shows that Jim isn't confined to having to be on the straight and narrow. Now
Right.
that he's signed that criminal informant thing, he can still go off and do his misadventures.
And that's why I'm interested in Jim Ellis's story. So whenever we go back to Nina Hayes, I found it to be very boring.
It treaded water in the second episode. I guess she was just trying to find information.
Yeah, so she learns that her predecessor, Leland Brain, who was also an FBI agent,
Who's also going after Saxton, yes?
yeah, he
Okay.
wound up in a mental institution.
Uh-huh.
So Nina, she ends up going with A1, and she realizes that there are files missing from his thing, and she's thinking someone is trying to protect Saxon, so I have
Right.
to find someone else that's close. Figures out that this Leland person has a wife named Evelyn. She tries to speak to Evelyn. Evelyn doesn't want anything to do with her, and this is when we learn, and this is what I mean by kind of world building. We're going on a global scale now at the end of the second
national
episode.
scale.
Evelyn, she ends up calling someone, I didn't get the name, but it's a guy in a cowboy hat, and she's like, look, Saxon, so we realize she's the person that took the files. Saxon, Nina is coming after this FBI agent. You need to do something about it. And then we learn that that person that she's calling is in D.C.
Yes, so he's one of the feds as well. He's got more clout and power, and he's probably going to be able to push her investigation. Now, whether or not Greg Grunberg is going to push back, we don't know. It's all just kind of a cliffhanger. But I agree with you. Kind of the small town murder fun of Jim Ellis's storyline supplants anything that's going on with Nina just going to different houses and getting the door slammed in her face.
I think what it is that Jim Ellis's story, and I know you said it was based off of this one, I guess, picture that J.J.
just an
Abrams had
idea in his head.
Yeah, but it's like that's what actually fit the series, that's what fit the Hot Wheels chase intro kind of tone. And it's like Nina Hayes, it seems like there doesn't seem to be a need for it, at least I
Not
feel
yet.
like.
Yeah. Not in the first two episodes. LaToya Morgan is the co-creator of the show. I don't want to just make it sound like it's just J.J. Abrams. And like I also said, they have the showrunner who is not only in Colony, but also did Lost with Damon Lindelof. And I remember him in the interviews at the later end of Lost. Like he's had his hit and misses. And so this show could have gone either way. What comparisons would you make for the show?
Well, one thing I was glad that they didn't do is a lot of shows that take place in the 70s, and some of them I like, like Winning Time and stuff like that, always try to make it too much like the 70s, where it's like there's a
Winning
filter.
Time was the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I'm just talking about like kind of old time shows. There's usually like a filter. There's strange stylistic choices. I was glad that this was shot pretty normally, but I never saw it. But the show, The Big Cigar, I remember the poster for it, and just from the poster, I remember that this
Interesting
show was
callback. I was thinking more along the lines because Life on Mars took place in 1973, and that was about the cops, but it was like in across the pond. And then the real connection, I would think, is like the buddy comedy, but a cop and someone working for the mafia or someone who's like a criminal Zootopia.
Zootopia, I was going to say, yeah.
Right. So it just feels like she's this innocent, naive, like newcomer who's trying to take down the big evil, and the other guy is like this sly fox dude. And
So
I don't
Judy
know.
Hopps is Nina Hayes, and
Yes. Yeah. No, doesn't that feel like that to
come
you?
to think of it, Zootopia did tackle things like racism, so there you go.
Was there racism against rabbits?
Yeah.
I don't remember
You
this
don't remember
from
the
this
movie
well.
too well.
The
And then Government Cheese also just kind of the tone, and Minx from the 70s, and it's also set in the West.
Yeah, I feel like Minx had more costuming. This feels like they're trying to concentrate on Sawyer's or Jim Ellis, but I looked up famous wheelmen in history. Do you know what the three names I got were?
No.
Lance Armstrong, Baby Driver, and a real like actual wheelman who helped rob a bank or something, Roy the Weasel James. Not to be confused with Jimmy the Weasel, who was also a mafia dude, but don't ask me about him. British racing driver. That is who Roy the Weasel James was, turned train robber. So it wasn't a bank, it was a train. And he would have gotten away with it too, if not for a fingerprint that they found at the layer that they planned the thing on a plate. So that's some real, like, they should adapt that at some point. And then, in fact, the blue suede shoes that we see are stolen. It's funny, they were never actually stolen in real life. They even sold for like $150,000.
So they
last
just
year.
came up with that. Oh, only last year.
Yeah, like, in fact, I think the story goes that Elvis gave his friend those shoes before he went off to the army. So, and that guy just kept them, and then they went to a bunch of museums everywhere. They were never just like hanging around at a party, so far as I know. And then Quantico, this is one that I feel like the show should have caught. She says she just graduated from Quantico. This
Yeah.
is 1972. Like I said, J. Edgar Hoover dies on May 2nd. And 5 days later, that's when Quantico opens. Before that, it was a different school that the FBI would go through. And so for her to be in that graduating class, it takes like, I think 9 months or something. It would have been impossible for it
Yeah.
to still be 1972. And it would have been just as big a deal that she was not only the first Black female FBI agent, but that she also graduated in the first class of Quantico. I don't know why they didn't talk about that.
Historically inaccurate.
They
yeah.
did, in interviews, mention that Sylvia Mathis was the first Black female FBI agent, and they tried to pay tribute to her, but she didn't come along until 1976. So there was more of a time division in that. Someone online noted that Nina is holding up a Morgan State University mug in one of the scenes, and it actually was still Morgan State College until 1975.
So
That's
they didn't
a real
get they didn't get like the details. It seems like 100% right.
Yeah, and I don't think they cared too much. Like I said, the heart transplant didn't happen in Arizona until 1979. And then something that was interesting is that the Phoenix branch of the FBI in Arizona opened in like 1919. That seems really early to me. But then it was like one guy, Eugene B. Silk, who was there, and he was the first special agent. And then when he left, the whole office shut down for like 6 or 7 years because like it was so small and the department wasn't that big at that time. And then later on, when it picked up in like the 20s, Paul E. Reynolds was one of the main FBI agents in charge, and he like mysteriously just got shot one day, and they found him dead in like a river in a canal, and they don't even know what happened. It's one of the few FBI murders of like one of the main dudes that's never been solved in Arizona. So I just found that interesting. And yeah, what do you think of the final cliffhanger of the show, which is the fact that the police cop survived, Grooms survived?
Yeah, Groom survived and he was able to call for backup. I thought that was ridiculous because like he takes 8 bullets.
It pisses me off because I think the show would be so much better if we didn't have this overhanging like,
Yeah.
oh, is this cop going to finally get, like, now it's destined to happen. Now there's no way it's not going to. I was really happy when they killed him off because I thought, oh, good, staunch that. Don't have this. I thought he was going to tell Warburn's character at first, sunglasses, and then sunglasses would use it against Jim Ellis. And I didn't like that either. But they kept him alive. And so it's just going to be a nag on the rest of the however many episodes. Have Ezra find out some other way than this cheesy, like, this guy was just staking out and seeing
yeah,
see what
it's
happened.
probably going to be way later in the season, like towards the season finale,
You think?
because he's been so injured in the hospital. That's when it's going to come out.
I don't know about that. I think it might be one of those things where he tells Ezra and Ezra doesn't believe it, and then Jim's able to get out of it, but then later on more evidence comes out, and that's where Ezra's like links back to what he heard earlier, and it's 100% 100% confirmed. That's how it goes in other shows, at least. But
I
overall,
felt
what would
like
you give? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I felt like this is the best, even though I haven't seen a lot of Josh Holloway since Lost. And then I think that Nina's storyline, though, it drags it down so much. I also felt like Nina and Jim seem to have a similar thread. Both have like a family, and that's the reason why they're going
Yeah, they're
after Ezra Saxton. I
a family aspect, the connection. Even Ezra was supposed to be on the East Coast when he took out Nina's dad, and then it would have been on the West Coast where he took out his brother, if that ends up being the case.
I also felt like Luna and Izzy, even though it's supposed to be like his brother, kid, and wife, I felt like that kind of dragged down the story as well.
So you're saying everything but the action scenes with Josh Holloway like running around or doing stupid stuff.
You have to understand that, like, so far what we've seen with Luna and Izzy is in the second episode, he was just there to stop them from his mission, to
Doesn't he
pad the
wake up with her?
runtime.
Like, is he sleeping with her, or is that someone else? It might be someone
That
else.
was someone else, yeah,
Okay.
talking about being an episode. Overall, I'm going to give the series a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
I think it passes, but I think, yeah, I need to, like, assurance that's going to be better in order to
They
keep
have
watching.
like a 5-season arc that they're already planning out. They're really like hoping that this takes off. So 6 out of 10 isn't the worst, especially when you think that 5 out of 10 for us is like base level, normal TV. It's a little bit better than that, but you're saying there's still room for improvement.
Yes.
So that's your rating. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. What'd you think of Jim having to bury the body?
Oh, yeah, we didn't even touch on that.
Yeah, well, that's for next time. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.